Have you ever stopped to think that maybe your political views, something so core to how you see the world, might actually be connected to your mental well-being?
It's not usually the first connection people make, is it?
No, not at all. But that's exactly what we're digging into today. We're doing a deep dive into this really fascinating, maybe even surprising relationship between political ideology and mental health.
Right. Specifically, we're looking at this idea that folks identifying as more leftist might experience mental health outcomes differently than people who identify as conservative.
Okay. And we've got quite a bit of material to unpack here.
Yeah, that's right. We've gathered some, well, pretty intriguing research and articles for this. They go into all sorts of factors, social, psychological, even environmental stuff that might explain some of these differences people are seeing.
It definitely sounds complex.
It is. So our mission today is really to, cut through some of that complexity. We want to pull out the key insights from these sources and give you a kind of shortcut to understanding it all without it feeling too overwhelming.
Makes sense. So you can grasp not just what is being suggested in the research,
Exactly.
but also why it might actually matter to you.
Okay, let's get into it then. Where should we start? Maybe with the psychological stressors. How do those link to political leanings, according to what we've looked at?
Good place to start. So the research we reviewed points out that individuals with leftist ideologies often focus quite heavily on things like social justice, equity, activism.
Which are, important pursuits.
Absolutely, very noble goals. But the sources suggest, perhaps paradoxically, that this focus can sometimes lead to higher levels of psychological stress.
How so? What's the mechanism there?
Well, think about it. Constant exposure to what are perceived as major injustices, big societal problems, climate change, systemic racism, economic inequality, that can create pretty intense feelings. Anxiety, sometimes hopelessness.
One perspective we saw describes it as a kind of overwhelming emotional burden, potentially tipping over into things like depression or anxiety disorders. It's like being constantly tuned in, maybe too tuned in, to the world's problems.
Wow, yeah. That sounds like a really heavy weight to carry emotionally, especially if you feel these things deeply.
It can be.
So, on the flip side, how does the conservative perspective look in these sources? How do they handle this same landscape of societal issues? Is it just ignoring them, or is there a different way of framing things?
Well, the sources suggest it's less about ignoring and more about a different framework. They propose that conservatives might experience lower levels of stress related to these big societal issues.
Okay, why is that?
Their ideologies often emphasize things like stability, tradition, order. And the idea presented is that this focus can provide a sense of comfort, maybe reassurance.
Right, a sense of predictability, perhaps?
Exactly. And this framework, the material suggests, might contribute to a more, let's say, positive general outlook and potentially better mental health outcomes. It's a different philosophical starting point for engaging with the world's challenges.
Interesting. That fundamental need for order playing out differently. So, okay, that's the internal psychological side. What about the external world? Are social connections?
The sources suggest they're pretty important for mental health, right? And maybe different across ideologies.
Oh, hugely important, yes. The studies we looked at often indicate that conservatives tend to cultivate quite close-knit communities, often based around shared values, shared beliefs.
Like church groups or local clubs, maybe?
Could be, yeah. And these strong social ties are described as really bolstering emotional resilience. They provide strong social support, especially, when times get tough. There's often a real sense of belonging there. Right. That makes intuitive sense, the power of community. Now, you mentioned earlier that leftists might have more diverse networks. That sounds good on the surface. But do the sources say that might actually lead to feelings of isolation sometimes? That seems counterintuitive.
It does seem like a paradox, doesn't it? And the sources do highlight this. While inclusivity is, of course, a core value on the left, the emphasis on intersectionality.
Understanding how different identities combine. Right.
Precisely. Understanding how various identities, race, gender, class, sexuality intersect to create unique experiences. Well, the sources suggest that within some leftist circles, this focus can sometimes, ironically, lead to feelings of alienation. Well, individuals might feel pressure, maybe struggle to feel correct enough or inclusive enough or perfectly aligned with every aspect of the ideology. It can sometimes create a sense of being an outsider, even within your own group.
Ah, okay, like a pressure for ideological purity.
Sort of, yeah. That striving for perfect alignment, plus the inherent challenges of bridging very diverse viewpoints, even within the left. can apparently exacerbate feelings of loneliness for some. And the sources link this to potentially worsening mental health outcomes.
That's a really nuanced point about social connection.
Yeah.
It's not just if you have connections, but the nature of them. Okay, and speaking of connecting,
Yeah.
or maybe disconnecting, media has to play a role here too. What did the sources say about media influence?
Oh, absolutely. A big role. The research really digs into this. It suggests that people on the left often consume news that heavily emphasizes negative events, societal problems.
Which, going back to the stress point, could fuel that anxiety.
Exactly. It can definitely lead to heightened anxiety and stress. And social media, in particular, gets called out for amplifying these issues.
How so?
Well, the sources note that leftists might be more likely to engage in online discussions about really contentious topics, arguing, debating.
Yeah.
It can create this kind of feedback loop of anxiety, maybe disillusionment, because you're just constantly immersed in the problems you care about.
Right, so it's the consumption and the active engagement online that can be draining.
Yeah.
What about conservatives in media? Is their experience different, according to this research?
On the other side, yeah, the material suggests that conservatives might be more likely to engage with media that reinforces their existing beliefs. Media that presents perhaps a more favorable or at least less alarming view of societal issues.
Kind of like echo chamber, maybe.
That term is often used, yes. This selective exposure, the sources propose, could lead to a less stressful media diet, let's say, and potentially contribute to better mental health outcomes.
And do they mention strategies conservatives might use?
Yeah, things like seeking validation from like-minded people, maybe within specific online groups or forums, are mentioned as ways they might bolster their mental resilience in the face of negative news.
Okay, this is all painting a picture, but let's get concrete. Did the sources cite any actual empirical data, like numbers on mental health trends?
They did, yeah. And some of it is quite striking. For instance, there's mention of a 2021 survey by the American Psychological Association.
Okay.
It reportedly found that self-identified liberals reported higher rates of anxiety and depression compared to conservatives.
Not much higher.
The figures cited were around 40% of liberals reporting struggles with mental health issues, compared to about 25% of conservatives indicating similar concerns.
Wow, 40 versus 25%. It's a pretty significant gap.
It is, and numbers like that suggest it's not just a minor difference. It points towards potentially, quite different ways these groups are experiencing and navigating the world, which leads to these distinct mental health outcomes.
It really makes you think that maybe political alignment is a bigger factor in well-being than we usually acknowledge.
It forces you to consider it, definitely.
And what about political polarization itself, the growing divide? Does that factor in?
Yes, the researchers looking at polarization definitely see a link. They've noted that some of the more extreme positions, which the sources tend to associate more with the left in this context, can contribute to increased mental health challenges.
In what way?
One point raised is about a kind of demand for perfectionism sometimes found in social justice movements, this intense pressure.
Pressure to always say the right thing, do the right thing.
Exactly. It can apparently lead individuals to internalize feelings of inadequacy or guilt, like they're never doing enough or they're not pure enough in their activism or beliefs.
That sounds exhausting. And I think you mentioned something earlier. Related to cancel culture. The sources touched on that too.
Yes, that concept comes up. Cancel culture, described in the sources as being prevalent in some leftist groups, is highlighted as another potential stressor by generating a significant amount of fear and stress related to social ostracization. The worry about being publicly called out, shamed, or sort of cast out of the group for perceived mistakes, even small ones. This threat, the sources suggest, adds another layer contributing to poor mental health for those who feel vulnerable to it.
Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground here. So psychological stress, social networks, media, polarization, even cancel culture anxieties.
Yeah.
Given all this, what are the takeaways? What are the implications for the future? How can we maybe use this understanding?
Well, one really practical implication discussed is for mental health professionals.
Okay.
The idea is that therapists should maybe recognize these unique stressors tied to ideological beliefs. Understanding this could lead to more customized therapy.
Right. So recognizing that a liberal client's anxiety might really stem from despair about, say, climate change?
Exactly. Or systemic injustice. While conservative client stress might be more tied to worries about economic instability or perceived moral decline, it allows for more targeted, more empathetic support if the therapist understands that potential context.
That makes a lot of sense, tailoring the approach. And what about more broadly for society? Any suggestions in the material for bridging these divides, considering the mental health aspect?
Yes. Another key point is the need to foster more open communication across these ideological lines.
Easier said than done, maybe?
Perhaps, but the sources suggest that bridging that gap, encouraging genuine dialogue between left and right, could actually help reduce feelings of isolation on both sides. It could enhance those social support networks we talked about.
And maybe find common ground?
Potentially. The material suggests that encouraging collaboration on shared social issues where possible might promote a sense of unity and actually bolster mental well-being across the board, helping people move beyond just seeing each other as ideological opponents.
So wrapping this up then, as we've explored today, the sources we dove into really do suggest this intriguing, maybe concerning link between your political ideology and your mental health.
Yeah, a connection driven by this complex mix of things, how we handle stress, who we connect with, what media we consume.
Right. And understanding these connections, these insights, it's important for you, the listener, maybe for your own self-awareness. Think about how these forces play out in your life.
Or just for a better grasp of the bigger picture, the societal dynamics that are shaping mental well-being right now.
Definitely. And as we all continue to navigate this, really complex world with its big social issues, maybe here's a final thought to chew on.
Okay.
Given what this research suggests, what steps could you take, or what could society do to genuinely promote mental well-being and foster understanding, even when we disagree so strongly on politics?
It's a tough question.
It really is.
Yeah.
It almost feels like, based on this research, you have one group trying constantly to fix the world and getting stressed by it, and another finding more peace in existing structures. And both paths have these real mental health implications. Food for thought, definitely.